let's continue on looking at our chord part, but adding a little bit more melodic interest to what we're doing. And one way that we do that in strummed parts is adding suspended chords. Now, a suspension, technically speaking, in music theory, is when a note is held over within a chord change. So, for example, if I go from a G to a D, but I keep my high G before I resolve it, in classical harmony, that's a suspension. In popular music, we use suspended chords as flavor, as melody, and you will generally see them indicated as sus, S-U-S. And there are basically two primary types of suspended chords that we use. And it has to do, in both cases, with taking the third of the chord and either moving it up or down. So, for example, a D chord has the major third on top. Three blind mice, right? By the way, that three blind mice thing is really helpful for recognizing the sound of a third, because really, now that I keep saying it, I challenge you to not hear it at the top note of this chord. Three. I'll come back to that and mention it again. The suspension is if I lift my middle finger and leave the E string open. This is a D sus2. And I'm sure you've come across this before in some kind of context like this. So that's a resolution of the sus2 suspension. If I add the pinky over here, that's a sus4, because think of a scale, right? Here's D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember I said about the references? Follow the yellow brick road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to use the sus2. I'm going to do this with a hammer. And just for fun, because we can, let's harmonize that suspension by lifting the index finger along with the middle and get a double hammer-on inside of this D chord. So technically speaking, what is this chord now? I suppose we could say it's like a sus2, sus4, but let's just look at this move as a harmony going with our high notes. And by the way, this is a sixth. Sounds great in the context of the chord. Now, I'm going to go to a straight C chord this time instead of the add 9, because this could be a different guitar part than the one that you did in lesson 1. Now, I am adding my little finger to this C chord just because I like the chime of that high note. But I'm going to pick up my middle finger, finger 2. This is a sus2, because here's the C root, and here's the D, the second of the scale. I can play the chord without that finger, leaving the D string open, and hammer. So we have a melody move that parallels what we did on the D chord. So in context, we get this. You might remember in a previous lesson I talked about doubles and near doubles and how you might have two guitars doing almost the same thing, but by changing up the chord voicings and the rhythm a little bit, it makes a sound that's more than a whole that's more than the sum of its parts. You end up with a much bigger sound because of the interaction between those two parts. And so this is what's going on here. If the other guitar is playing the add 9 like this, and this guitar is playing the C like this with the sus2, we have all the same notes working together, but in different parts of the chord. It just adds more ring, more resonance, more fullness. Now, does it matter which notes we combine? Absolutely, and there's a trial and error aspect to this. But as a rule, if you can take the same chord and voice it two different ways, they're probably going to get along when you hear them together.